Welcome to the Lowdown Mortgage Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley. Bam! And joining me today is someone who started her mortgage career as a self-described terrible processor in Buffalo, New York. She earned a track scholarship through sheer competitiveness, spent summers doing roofing and carpet work to help her family, and somehow parlayed a psychology degree into leading nearly 200 loan officers across an entire division. Lisa Mesler, welcome to the Lowdown.
Thank you for having me, Connor. Bam!
Bam! Love it. Hey, so you and I both have something in common in that we have college degrees that we're not necessarily using anymore, although somewhat, right? My degree is in fine arts. A lot of people probably would not be surprised to hear that, but psychology, I'm sure, comes into play in your day-to-day as well. But I love that you were, working with the family business, doing all that stuff growing up. And anyway, I'm excited to have this conversation with you, Lisa. It's been fun getting to know you. So I like to jump right in and start just with let's just start getting to the questions, right? I mentioned earlier in the introduction that you started as a broker processor. You described that you weren't so great at it, right? So, and somehow ended up in this role that you're in today, where you're overseeing, a ton of loan officers across like 9-10 states. Walk us back to the beginning, though. Like, what made a kid from upstate New York who spent their summers, doing roofing work and antique shows, really decide that mortgage was a place to build a career?
Yeah. So I would just say, like many of us in this business, like we just kind of fall into it. Somehow we find it. And so kind of got lucky that way. My first job out of college was selling yellow page advertising. We can see that didn't really have much of legs to it, right? Especially when that was happening, like internet was coming out. But starting out at a young age working, child labor laws really didn't, account for anything in my parents' household. Starting out at 10, my parents had us out there working pretty much most of our summers. Vacation to me, or my Disney World, was going to 4-H camp in the summers. So that was my 1 week off, I felt like. But yeah, it was great. Like I'm a super small person. And so here we are. My dad has me out there like helping like strip roofs and cleaning up the roofing work and, in the heat and laying carpet and all of that fun stuff. So I think just having that background and having that drive, there's some drawbacks to that because it's hard to kind of sometimes unwind from, work is fun. It becomes that way, as crazy as that sounds. And so I think it also kind of laid a natural and tendency to wanting to help, like not only my family, but other people in my trajectory, whether it was my track and cross country team, my team now and all of that. But yep, started out as a processor. I said I wasn't good at it, but it was a great way to learn the business and to be able to have an understanding of the background of it. So definitely proud of what I've done because it was definitely like sort of a unique beginning, and not a lot of people like look at me and go, that's something that you would have done growing up, for sure.
Yeah, so I'm curious, and I'll just kind of sidetrack here, but what was the event that you ran, like when you were doing track and field? What was your event?
So I was a 1500, 3000, which is close to mile, 2 mile. And then in college that went to 5K, 10K. So my best event in college was the 10K, which is 25 laps around the track, which is a long time. But hey, it paid the bills. I was fortunate to like join the track team. I kept asking my parents, like, hey, I want to join track in 7th grade because we did the presidential fitness challenge, and I beat one of the guys on the team in my gym class, as silly as it sounds. And I was like, I want to do this, but they're like, no, you can't do it. You have other work to do. So like cleaning the house and whatever tasks that we had to do for the family business. So finally I convinced them in 9th grade to like let me do it. And in 10th grade, I made state meet my first year in cross country. And then they're like, wait, maybe there's some legs to this. And it ultimately helped me pay for college. So it was kind of funny.
That's awesome. Well, that's the event that everybody goes to the concession stand during, right? Like this one's going to be a while, so we'll come back. Now, as you were kind of getting started in your career, you mentioned to me that you had a colleague who sat next to you and said that they knew from the moment that they met you, at 25, that you were built for something bigger. You mentioned, growing up from a place of scarcity, helping your parents, competing in track, always being provider for the people around you. How much of your drive today is still rooted in that earlier version of yourself, and how has that shaped the kind of leader that you've become?
Yeah, I mean, I've always just looked at stuff as that you had no choice, right, to be successful and to push through things. And even though that there's failure, you have to like kind of compartmentalize that. I'm great at compartmentalizing things. Even when I was doing that 10K, I would be like, it's not 25 laps, it's one quarter, and that's kind of how I even plan my day with my time, like my time blocking on the things that are a little bit, maybe the activities that you don't want to work on, like just kind of breaking things down. But I just looked at it as failure wasn't an option. I one of the first races that I ran, it always resonates with me. I got put in this like seated race with a lot of girls who had been already like running for years and years, and it was my first year running, and it was a big race at a big university up in New York, and I got last in that race, like dead last. It's raining, it's Buffalo, it's super cold, and I was so far behind, probably like 100 meters behind in the 1500, and I started to get like this pity clap. I don't know if you've ever been around sports when people are like, hey. And I'll tell you,
Yeah,
that
keep
was the
going.
keep going. You got it. And it was just like one of those moments in my life that I'm like, I am not going to get lost again. And so, it's just kind of, trying to work through the bad days and the good days and just knowing that you just got to put more preparation in and kind of keep honing your skills to make sure you get to that next level.
Yeah, I love that like still drives you crazy today. Like I
Yeah.
get it. I've been there. So, now I know you've said that every sort of major step in your career came from someone recognizing you, tapping you on your shoulder, and offering that advancement, and not necessarily from you like lobbying for the role. You also mentioned that timing has been a real factor in things like pointing to where, your kids getting older, your husband, as a stay-at-home dad, making it possible for you to travel more and do, step into those roles. How do you think about the relationship between readiness and timing when it comes to saying yes to a big opportunity?
Well, it's always nerve-wracking taking on the next opportunity, because most of us work from a place that we want to, grow in our careers and do the next step. I've been very fortunate to have great mentors along my way, and great mentors here at my current company. So there's been a lot of support in that. And then, of course, like my husband being a stay-at-home dad before, that was really cool to be a stay-at-home dad. We had moved to North Carolina and didn't have a lot of people to help us with childcare. And then, we have a younger son who had learning differences. So he used to actually be in the mortgage business as well, but it was important for like us to have somebody to be able to do that. And it just kind of evolved that, because of my personality, I think, he was able to do that, but it allowed me to have the autonomy to be able to commit, to be able to do all the evening events, but still make the baseball games and the other things. It created space, but also with that, it also helped me to accelerate like the belief in myself because I was given those next opportunities because of, the great mentors and leaders that I was around.
Yeah, I love that you've been given these opportunities, that you've been able to step into them and really just take advantage of that. I mean, at the end of the day, so many people struggle with just the seasonality of life. And I'm a big believer that there are times where there are opportunities there that you're just not ready for, or they're just might not be as accessible to you because of different circumstances. And when the timing is right and you're able to do it in all the circumstances, it's magical. Like you can really step into it and do that. So I'm glad you've had that opportunity along the way. Now I want to pivot a little bit to leadership, because you cover like multiple states, West Virginia to Florida. You manage what, 5 regional managers, a bunch of branch managers, so close to 200 loan officers, all with different ambitions, different beliefs about where their ceilings are, different ideas of what success looks like, and yet you stay really accessible. In fact, I think you mentioned that one of your regional managers even teases you about being too accessible to everyone. Like, what is your philosophy when it comes to figuring out what someone really wants? And then how do you lead someone who may be putting a ceiling on themselves that they don't even realize is there?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to have belief in people. And I think going back to like the competitive sports piece of it and being a part of that, and a couple of my core values are like encouragement and like letting people know like you can do this. I mean, as basic as it is, I think the mortgage business can sometimes be a little bit basic in that respect, but I definitely think it's important to really spend time truly getting to know people, engaging with them. And the little things do matter. Like I had, somebody as simple as say to me, my previous divisional manager never even commented on my LinkedIn accounts or my social media. And you were always sort of encouraging me to do that and still doing that and engaging with their spouses if they're in like lines of work that are, realtors and things like that, and just helping people kind of promote. So I'm a big person of just making sure that like, hey, it's okay. Like, let's talk about whatever's on your mind. Like whether it's good, bad, or ugly, I would rather know because I am a pretty literal person, like black and white. And I can't fix things or help people grow if I don't know kind of where they're at. And so maybe using that psych degree that I was laughing about, where like, asking more questions, getting to know people more on a personal level and trying to really dig into what that like looks like for them. I think that's like starts there, and then just being present with them. I mean, that never goes out of style.
Yeah. I think I mean, it's such a great call out. The little things, right? Like liking someone's social media post is, I mean, it really does to a lot of people, especially if they're pouring like their guts into it, right? Like social media for a lot of people is very hard. They're stepping out of their comfort zone. If they're doing something that's not just posting the corporate, content that's provided by the marketing department, but it's a personal post or it's a hot take on the industry. When the boss says, "Hey, I like that," like it does, like people notice it, and they see that you see them, and I think that's huge. So for other leaders that might be listening to this, like that's a great way to support your team, and that's not very time consuming, and you can show them that hey, you're watching, and that you see what they're working on. So I think it's great that you're doing that and staying accessible to the team and always being ready to have those conversations. And I guess like you mentioned that you're one of the rare breeds that was able to move from the bank environment into the independent space and continue thriving. And you said that you're not quite sure how to take, that as a compliment, but you took it as a compliment, which is, what is actually different about lending or leading in the independent mortgage world versus the bank environment? And did you have to learn or unlearn anything when you made that transition?
Yeah. I would just say, like, I was fortunate to have two friends that had worked in the banks with me for a long time, probably almost 20 years. Two great friends, two great loan officers that had like successfully transitioned. And so, that was an encouragement because I had recruiting calls previously, but I was always like, for, being tapped and things like that, I am sort of risk adverse in my mind. And I was always known as the girl who's wearing the black dress and the pearls. But so I guess I had to unlearn first and foremost, like I guess my dressing style. That was like when I first came, I was like, hey, what do I wear? So that was like a little bit of a difference, but had a great career in the banks. It was a great foundation, learned a lot. The training was amazing. So very happy with that experience. Can't complain, had a lot of great mentors, but the biggest change has just been being able to be, with a company that's committed to like technology and the platform, but also being letting people do what I love best, which is mortgages. Like I like totally nerd out on it. I love it when my team wins. I love it when individuals win, whether going back to the social media thing, it's like I always try to look for ways to like encourage the folks that have not just the big producers, like the ones coming out of the gates, like the rising stars. And so just being somewhere where people can have the autonomy to like really showcase their own personality and be authentic and be able to do that has been like one of the biggest things. But it was always like it took me a minute to get used to some of the processes from that perspective, more the entrepreneurial spirit, encouraging people to work on their social brands, working on that for myself, right? Like I told you, doing this is like outside of my comfort zone, but it's like, evolving and, trying to do that has been a big thing. And I think that's what's been the difference. But it's been a really fun journey. Like every step has been, I've learned along the way and I've met so many great people, and it just continues to be that. So I've been very blessed in that situation.
Yeah, I love that you're stepping out of the comfort zone and leading by example and just sort of getting into the arena and not just like commenting on it from afar. I can't tell you how many originators I've talked to that are, experimenting with this or that. They're trying to do more on social media, or they're building some marketing campaign on their own, or some sort of AI automation or a class that they're teaching, whatever it is, right? And then they get criticism from their leadership, and yet that leader's not doing or has no experience with the things that they're trying to. So it's kind of like they don't get me, they don't understand what I'm trying to do. So I love that you're in the arena doing those things too and evolving along with everyone else. And I just think it gives you a lot more credibility as a leader, honestly. And I think, it's important. But I know something that a lot of leaders struggle with, and that you've, admitted, is that you kind of get in your own way sometimes. Like you want to jump in, fix things, do things for people, be a people pleaser. And you've had to learn to sort of step back and let others kind of handle things as though it's still a work in progress. How do you catch yourself in that moment?
Yeah. I don't know if I have quite caught myself in that moment yet, but
It's hard.
I know it's like I've been, trying to work on like process improvements. I've been reading a book recently called Traction and things like that, and trying to put some more, space in there for process, and time blocking and different things like that. But that is definitely always still that moment because I struggle with that internally, because it's also gotten me to where I've gotten like been able to achieve. But at the same point, I know it's part of the process that's holding me back. Like part of me loves it. Like when a loan officer calls me about a question, like I'm always going to take their call. Um, you know, Somebody asked me to help them set up like a South Carolina bond loan the other day. And I was like, oh my gosh, I never even lived in South Carolina. But I thought it was like a nice compliment that they thought I could do that, right? But trying to like obviously delegating is something I'm working on, so some of those are the things that I'm working on, is just like really always being trying to fix and implement the process and making sure that I can find the right people to help other people. But it's a work in progress for sure.
Yeah. Shout out to Traction. Phenomenal book for anyone who's trying to build some extra design into their business and make it self sustaining. Highly recommend. So it's awesome that you're reading that. Now, if you're a leader in the mortgage business, you're expected to be a recruiter too. It comes with the territory. And some people are cool with that. And
Yeah.
some people are like, wait a second, I didn't ask for that. But when we were getting to know each other, you shared a story about you actually had a recruiter that had turned down a big sign on bonus. Recruiters get offered sign on bonuses too, and a guarantee from a competitor because they valued the support system that you and the other regional managers provide to actually close candidates, which for any recruiters that are listening to that, your partners matter. From the seat that you're in, like what should a loan officer who's evaluating a move actually be asking the recruiters, and what are some of the red flags that most people miss?
I mean, I think a lot of people think that they've done their due diligence, but they really need to like really be honest with themselves when they're learning about other organizations or the leader themselves, like not asking the right questions about the organization, really taking the time to learn the support system, the infrastructure, all of the things that go along with a move, what the transition and the onboarding looks like. And then just knowing like who the people are that they're going to be working with, after they start, do they have a good leader who's going to be supporting them and really encouraging them and helping them fix their problems and being that person. But it's not just always about money, right? It's like sometimes that looks great. I've had those offers when I was producing to have like really big dollar, like, good sign-ons back in the day. That was a long time ago, but I also knew like in the back of my heart like that it wasn't like the right fit for me long term, and sometimes just like taking that time to do that, it's so critical because sometimes when you make those like a decision that's a miss, it can set you back. But if it was, maybe the right decision, making that decision to make that change quickly can also be the good next step. Yeah, if you're going to be in these roles, you definitely have to help recruit and grow your team, but also like the engagement piece with your existing team can be so critical with that. And so, for somebody to dive into the existing team and what that looks like, and are they happy to be there, and asking for producers who work here and having those conversations, like from the real people doing the job every day, that never always a good thing to always do because they'll tell you the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah, it's such a balancing act too as a leader to, you're bringing in new talent to the team, but then also you got to continue like dating your spouse, right? Like you got to keep everyone else happy still and make sure that they still are seen and heard and taken care of. And, I think in this industry it's gotten kind of crazy with all the money that gets thrown around and all the things that, the people that are on the existing team, they know it too, and they're getting offers too. And so it's just a delicate, like, there's just so many hats you have to wear. So it's a
Oh,
lot going on. Um, so I want to sort of, I guess, get to like a heartwarming moment before we start to wrap up. And then you mentioned, um, someone that you knew that went from a $40,000 a year job from outside of the industry to making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, leading a team, growing something real. And you said that on a day when you like are just getting your brains kicked in, right? A random text from someone like that reminds you of the impact that you've had and the real opportunity that's out there for people. For a loan officer that's listening right now who's thinking about whether this industry is just worth even staying in anymore, what would you want them to hear from someone who's watched people go on that kind of journey up close?
I mean, it's when you get those random texts, and it always happens to be when you typically need it the most. Um, I mean, it comes down to purpose, right? It tells you you're in the right place where you're supposed to be. And to be able to have people like that in my career, it's been a blessing. And just coming from like where I came from and like the way I grew up, it's just nice. I love seeing people be able to flourish and be able to have the opportunity that this industry provides. And there are days obviously that it's hard. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, but just staying committed to being a lifelong learner, just because you got your mortgage license or you hit this goal, like there, especially with all this AI and the technology and things like that. I mean, it's so important to be able to commit to yourself to continuous learning and collaboration, and look for mentors and for other people out there who can help you with, who are going to support and encourage you. I mean, it's a fun place to be. And I just had one yesterday. Somebody sent me something about just a young woman leader just getting into the business, and she's now a producing sales manager here. And we were working on some videos the other day, which she didn't want to do either, but like for our social media. But she wrote like a nice email just saying how excited she was to grow in her career. So just seeing that like just makes me so fired up for her, because like I just know she's gonna kill it. And it's just what makes my day. It's honestly like the simplest thing. And sometimes you don't always feel like you deserve those kind of kudos, but it's the universe coming back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I mean, for anybody, I think finding a mentor is so important. And I think it's easy to overthink that if you reached out to someone, they wouldn't want to hear from you, or you don't want to bother them, or, they do so much more volume than me. Why would they want to talk to me, sort of thing, and box yourself in? The reality is, a lot of those people they would love to talk to you. They would love to help. They would love to share the things that they're doing. And the best way to repay them is to honor what they tell you by doing it. And so that's the only advice I would give is if you're seeking advice and mentorship, take it and do something with it. Don't be the person that just asks and then goes off and does their own thing, right? Like these people know what they're doing and they've got really great advice. And so, anyway, Lisa, I've asked a lot of questions. We've talked about a lot. Before we say goodbye, is there anything that you just want to share with anyone who's listening that maybe you didn't get an opportunity to speak on, while we've been talking today?
No, thank you so much for having me on. I mean, it was just so great. I mean, I love the engagement of it. I love the commitment that you have to the industry and all that you provide in terms of mentorship and leadership to people throughout. And, you've done a great job at building that out. I would just say, you know, taking that time to continue to grow and look for mentors, like you said, I think is super important. And, always tweaking your process and being coachable is always the best part of how you can exceed and excel in this fun industry that we have the pleasure of being in.
But well, Lisa Mesler, thank you for being on the lowdown. Definitely will be keeping an eye on you and following you and wishing you the best from the sidelines. And just thanks for being a part of the show. It's great having you on.
Yeah, you too, Connor. Thank you.